In the year 1241, on the vast plains of Hungary, the pride of European chivalry gathered in a formidable show of power. An armored army of 80,000 men, the cream of Christendom, prepared to defend their world from a horde of what they considered faceless barbarians from the east. But what they did not know was that they were not facing an anonymous horde. They were facing the mind of a single man, an old general, the loyal war dog of Genghis Khan, a master strategist who saw before him not an army, but a herd of prey, about to be driven into an orchestrated hunt on a continental scale. The battle about to begin would not be a fight, it would be an execution. The legend of the Battle of Mohi is the story of how the most sophisticated intelligence can disguise itself as primitive chaos. Subutai, the greatest and yet most unknown of Genghis Khan's generals, annihilated the Hungarian army by executing the grandest and most perfect version of the quintessential Mongol tactic, the feigned retreat. He did not simply feign a rout in the heat of a single battle. He orchestrated a campaign of deception that spanned months and thousands of kilometers, dividing his forces to crush Hungary's allies before they could help, then luring the main Hungarian army, confident and arrogant, to a killing field of his own choosing. This is the epic of how an army, underdog in numbers but superior in discipline, speed, and strategy, dismantled an armored giant. Subutai did not win the battle, he designed it. His victory was achieved by transforming his enemy's confidence into suicidal recklessness and their fortified camp, which was meant to be their refuge, into their tomb. This is the chronicle of the greatest hunt in history. A masterclass in the art of war delivered by an old nomad who came close to conquering Europe, proving that the sharpest mind is always the deadliest weapon. In command of the Mongol force, though often operating from the shadows, was Subutai, the genius behind the throne. At over 65 years old, he was a living relic of the age of Genghis Khan, the most experienced, feared, and respected veteran of the Mongol army. Although the nominal commander was Batu Khan, grandson of the great Khan, it was Subutai's mind that planned and executed the invasion of Europe with the precision of a grandmaster of chess. His army, of approximately 50,000 men, was not a horde, but a perfectly disciplined war machine, composed mainly of lethal horse archers, capable of covering astonishing distances and living off the land, moving as a single organism across continents. Subutai's cause was the mission that had consumed his entire life, the conquest of the world, the divine mandate given to Genghis Khan. For him, Europe was not a special adversary, but simply the next phase in the inexorable expansion of the Mongol Empire, the next chessboard on which to demonstrate his mastery. Every move, every feint, every attack was part of a large-scale plan conceived years before on the distant steppe. He did not come to plunder. He came to conquer and to incorporate the lands of the West into the largest empire the world had ever known. His motivation was the manifest destiny of his people. Facing this disciplined force was the giant, the Kingdom of Hungary, led by King Bela IV. He was a competent monarch, but he stood at the head of a shaky feudal coalition of arrogant nobles, jealous of their prerogatives and overly confident in the supremacy of their heavy cavalry. His army was a massive force for the time, reaching up to 80,000 men, a wall of steel that included the elite of Hungarian cavalry, the experienced Knights Templar, and contingents of allies from all over Europe. In a frontal charge, on a traditional battlefield, they seemed an almost invincible force, destined to crush the light horsemen of the steppe. The fatal weakness of the Hungarian giant was its cultural blindness and arrogance. They completely underestimated the tactical and strategic sophistication of the Mongols. They saw them as undisciplined savages, a plague of locusts incapable of complex tactics, siege operations, or long-term planning. They firmly believed that their heavy cavalry, with its thundering charge, would simply run over the Mongol horse archers, whom they considered mere skirmishers. They could not conceive that they were about to face not a horde, but the most advanced and lethal military system of its time, led by one of the greatest minds in history. Subutai's stroke of genius, his true masterpiece, was executed months before a single arrow was fired at Mohi. It was a strategic deception on a continental scale. Knowing that King Bela IV would expect help from his Polish and German allies, Subutai divided his forces. While he and Batu advanced into the heart of Hungary, he sent another Mongol army, under his generals Baidar and Kadan, on a devastating diversionary campaign through Poland. The sole purpose of this campaign was to intercept and destroy the Central European armies before they could join the Hungarians. The trap was being prepared on two simultaneous fronts. Just 2 days before the decisive Battle of Mohi, that Mongol diversionary force met the combined Polish and German army at the Battle of Legnica. In a terrifying display of Mongol tactics, they completely annihilated the European army. With this victory, Subutai had ensured that King Bela IV would be utterly alone when the moment of truth arrived. He had isolated his prey before delivering the mortal blow. The main battle had not yet begun, but thanks to Subutai's strategic genius, it was already half won. If you want to discover how a general used an entire continent as a chessboard, subscribe and activate notifications, because Subutai's final lesson is about to begin. The first phase of the final trap was executed on the night of April 10th. A small Mongol vanguard launched a seemingly bold but inept attack to seize the only stone bridge crossing the Sajo River. The Hungarian defenders, led by Prince Kalman and Archbishop Ugrin Chak, easily repelled the attack. This small, easy victory was like a poison to the Hungarian ego. They celebrated their success, convinced they had contained the main Mongol threat and proven the superiority of their arms. They retired to their fortified camp, complacent and secure, unaware that the small skirmish was merely the bait designed to keep them exactly where Subutai wanted them. At dawn on April 11th, the second phase of Subutai's plan was set in motion. Batu Khan, following instructions, launched a massive and noisy frontal assault on the Hungarian bridgehead. To the Europeans' surprise, the Mongols deployed catapults, siege weapons, in the open field. A rain of stones and explosive gunpowder projectiles began to fall on the bridge's defenders, a shocking and unexpected tactic. The entire attention of the Hungarian army, from the king to the last soldier, was fixed on this single point. They believed, with absolute certainty, that this was the main battle, the horde's desperate attempt to cross the river. But while the Hungarians were hypnotized by the spectacle of fire and fury at the bridge, the old general Subutai, the Fox of the Steppe, was executing his masterstroke. Far from sight, downstream in the pre-dawn darkness, he had led 30,000 of his men, the bulk of the Mongol army, in a silent and disciplined operation. During the night, his engineers had built a makeshift pontoon bridge. At dawn, as Batu began his noisy diversion, Subutai's main army had already crossed the river unopposed and was methodically deploying to attack the flank and rear of the Hungarian camp. The revelation came like a phantom emerging from the morning mist. Subutai's forces suddenly appeared on the flank of the Hungarian camp, where no one expected them. Panic seized Bela's army. Caught completely by surprise, they were violently pushed back into their own fortified camp, a barricade of wagons that had been designed for their protection. But now, surrounded and attacked from multiple directions, their fortress became a death trap, a killing pen. The Mongols encircled them and began to rain fire arrows down upon the mass of men and horses trapped inside. It was then, at the height of the chaos and desperation, that Subutai executed his most cruel and brilliant move, the very essence of the Mongol philosophy of war. He ordered his men to deliberately open a gap in their encircling lines. To the west, he created a seemingly tempting escape route. For the trapped Hungarians, it looked like a miracle, a chance to flee and save their lives. What little discipline they had left completely disintegrated. Nobles, knights, and foot soldiers, in a save yourself who can stampeded toward that gap. But the escape was the final trap. The disorganized retreat was precisely what Subutai wanted. Once the Hungarians abandoned the relative protection of their camp and became a disordered mass of fugitives, the real hunt began. The Mongol horse archers, who had been waiting patiently, launched in pursuit. The retreat transformed into an organized massacre over miles of open country. The fresh and disciplined Mongol horsemen rode alongside the columns of exhausted fugitives, riddling them with arrows at their leisure. The slaughter did not last an hour, but 2 whole days. The Mongols relentlessly pursued the remnants of the Hungarian army, hunting them like animals, giving them no rest and no quarter. The plain of Mohi and the roads leading west became a vast graveyard. Subutai's victory was total, an annihilation achieved not by brute force, but by impeccable planning and a profound understanding of enemy psychology. He had used the Hungarians' confidence to make them complacent, their camp to trap them, and their survival instinct to destroy them. The battle was not won in the clash of steel against steel. It was won in the darkness, on a makeshift pontoon bridge. It was won with a perfectly timed diversion, and it was sealed with the creation of a false hope. Subutai had not fought an army. He had manipulated it, herded it, and dismantled it piece by piece, with the cold precision of a butcher. The underdog had not just defeated the giant, he had made it disappear. The genius of the maneuver lay in its ability to turn the enemy's every action into a mistake. The successful defense of the bridge became the cause of their complacency. The concentration of their forces at one point became the opportunity to be flanked. Their fortified camp became their prison, and their attempt to flee became their death sentence. Subutai did not react to his enemy's moves. He made his enemy move exactly as he desired. The annihilation was so complete that the Kingdom of Hungary was left virtually defenseless. The army that was supposed to protect Christendom had been wiped off the map in one of the most one-sided defeats in military history. The old general, the servant of a Khan long dead, had proven once again that the Mongol horde was not a blind force of nature, but the sharp instrument in the hands of the most brilliant strategist of his time. The battlefield fell silent, covered by tens of thousands of bodies. Subutai's victory was the culmination of a lifetime dedicated to the art of war. It was the ultimate demonstration that speed, deception, and discipline, when directed by a brilliant mind, are a force that no wall of steel, however thick, can resist. The gate to Europe was now wide open. The feigned retreat, the Mongols' signature tactic, had been elevated by Subutai to a strategic art form. It was not merely a feint on the battlefield, but a philosophy of war. He feigned weakness in Poland to isolate his true target. He feigned ineptitude at the bridge to pin his enemy, and he feigned a gap in his lines to annihilate them. At every stage, the Hungarians believed they were winning, until the precise instant they realized they had lost everything. The statistics of the carnage at Mohi and the subsequent pursuit are almost inconceivable. The Hungarian army was not simply defeated, it was exterminated. From a force that may have reached 80,000 men, estimates of casualties reached the staggering figure of 70,000 dead, including virtually the entire nobility and military leadership of the kingdom. In contrast, Mongol losses were minimal, probably a few thousand men. It was one of the most lopsided and decisive victories in all of history, a testament to the terrifying efficiency of Subutai's war machine. The fate of the defeated commander, King Bela IV, was that of a fugitive in his own kingdom. He managed to escape the battlefield but had to flee across the country, relentlessly pursued by Mongol detachments. His kingdom, now without an army, was completely defenseless and in ruins. The defeat was so absolute that royal power evaporated, and the political structure of Hungary collapsed, leaving the population at the mercy of the conquerors. The battle had not just destroyed an army, it had shattered a nation. With Hungary prostrate, the Mongols spent the rest of the year consolidating their control, plundering and devastating the country with systematic brutality. The occupation was catastrophic for Hungary, with some estimates suggesting that up to half of its population perished due to war, famine, and massacres. Subutai's victory was not an end in itself, but the prelude to the incorporation of Hungary into the Mongol Empire. The gate to Central and Western Europe was now wide open, and Vienna and the Holy Roman Empire were the next targets on Subutai's list. The most significant political and military consequence of the Battle of Mohi was that it left Central Europe on the brink of the abyss. With the Hungarian army annihilated and the Polish-German army destroyed at Legnica 2 days earlier, there was no significant military force left between the Mongols and the heart of Europe. Subutai began actively planning the next phase of the invasion, with his scouts reaching as far as the outskirts of Vienna and the Adriatic coast. Panic seized the European courts, from Rome to Paris, as they realized they had no effective military response to the Mongol threat. The battle and the subsequent invasion became a deep and lasting national trauma in Hungary's collective memory, known as the Tatarjaras, or Tatar invasion. Although the Mongols eventually withdrew, the devastation was so profound that it forced the Hungarians to rebuild their nation from scratch. King Bela IV, upon his return, initiated a massive program of building stone castles and military reforms, abandoning the traditional feudal model in favor of tactics inspired, ironically, by those of his conquerors. The defeat, in the long run, forced a military modernization in Hungary. For military history, Subutái's European campaign, culminating at Mohi, is studied to this day as the pinnacle of mobile warfare and strategic deception. It is a perfect and terrifying example of how a smaller army, but faster, better led, and with a superior doctrine, can completely annihilate a massive, brute force opponent. The coordination of separate armies over hundreds of kilometers, the use of psychological warfare, and the flawless execution of the large-scale feigned retreat cemented Subutái's reputation as one of the greatest military geniuses of all time. The event became a foundational myth not only for Hungary, but also for Europe itself. The Mongol threat became a legend, a cautionary tale of an almost supernatural power from the east. The unexpected withdrawal of the Mongols was seen by many in Christendom as a divine intervention, a miracle that saved them in their darkest hour. Subutái's campaign, though brief, left an indelible scar on the European psyche, a reminder of how close the continent came to being absorbed by the Empire of the Steppe. The final chapter of Subutái's conquest of Europe is perhaps the most incredible twist of fate in history. As the old general, at the height of his triumph, was in Hungary methodically planning the invasion of Austria, Italy, and the rest of the continent, a messenger arrived from the other side of the world. He brought news from the distant Mongol capital of Karakorum. The great Khan Ogadai, son and successor of Genghis Khan, was dead. By Mongol law, the death of the great Khan required all princes of Genghis's bloodline, no matter where in the world they were, to return to the capital to participate in the Kurultai, the assembly to elect a successor. Batu Khan, the nominal commander of the army in Europe, was one of those princes. Despite the protests of Subutai, who knew that conquest was within his grasp, the law was absolute. The Mongol army abandoned its plans, turned around, and began the long march back home. Subutai, the undefeated conqueror, was forced to leave Europe at the very moment he was about to engulf it, and he would never return. Christendom was not saved by an army, but by an accident of succession thousands of kilometers away.